Hello everyone, my name is Noir. Today I wanted to start doing plugin reviews. I've collected quite a few over the couple of years I've been producing, and I figured one of the best ways to make use of the ones I don't use and sort of spread knowledge would be to start doing plugin reviews. I thought I'm just going to start going through them one a week to start with. And once I start getting better at editing this sort of video, I'll increase it, maybe do 2 until I run out of plugins, which I don't think will happen for a while. So let's get started today. Today I am doing a classic. If you're a producer, you know about it, you've heard about it before. This is RC-20. You'd have to live under a rock really to not know about this plugin. It's pretty big, but you know, gotta start somewhere with all these plugins. So this plugin right here is very popular. It's used for all sorts of stuff because it does so many things. It's so versatile. You can use it to emulate old machines, old samplers. You can use it to add distortion to sound. You can use it to shape sounds, really. It's just so versatile. It's got so many different features and functions. I'm going to walk through a bit of it today and explain the overview. I've got the manual on the side because there's still some things. I've been using this plugin for a while, but there's still things about the plugin that I don't even know. So I figured it would be a bit of a learning experience for me while I'm teaching people as well. So I'll give you a quick overview of everything on the plugin, and I'll go through some similar plugins and compare maybe the price. Alright, so first thing at the top here, RC-20 retro color, and then next to it we've got the presets. You can make your own, you can save them. There's heaps that come with it. I love using these and then tweaking them. So like if I was using a synth, one of the best ways to use a synth is called subtractive synthesis, which is just taking a preset and then adjusting it to your liking. So you got additive and subtractive, and additive is adding onto the preset, like increasing things, and subtractive is taking away. So I love using the presets here. Anyways, we're just sitting on vinyl at the moment. This magnitude up here is just a giant wet knob. You can adjust the overall dryness or wetness of the plugin. You can see whenever I move it, all the knobs go up and down. Up here you can come to the manual, open the user folder for where you've saved your presets, and we'll move down to this middle section here. So the first section, these are all different sections with different effects. So the first section here is the noise one. I'll just click play so you can hear it. You can adjust the level here. You've got your different sounds. It's just meant to emulate old samplers and machines. The tone here, it determines how much high end and low end it has. So if you turn it all the way up, it increases the high end a lot, starts to really pop. If you turn it down, it's just the low end of the sound. And then this is pre and post routing. So if you run a sound into it, you can choose whether it plays this sound before the effects or after. Because if you use like the filter down here or something, and you do this pre-routing, this sound will get filtered. Whereas if you turn it to post, this sound will be applied after the filtering, so it won't be affected. This follow knob follows the dynamic range of a sound, so how loud it is. So if a sound gets really loud, with vinyls, if a sound gets really loud, the vinyl sound starts to really kick up as well. So it emulates an actual vinyl recording, that's what that is. And then the duck here also happens sometimes with vinyl recordings. Sometimes with vinyl recordings, when a loud sound comes through, the vinyl sound cuts out too. So these are both made to emulate a vinyl. And then the flux, this is sort of like a dry wet knob, sort of. It just increases what it does. You can turn it up and it overemphasizes everything that it's doing. Next section, we've got the wobble. This is to produce wow and flutter, which is slight pitch bending. So flutter is much quicker and wow is much slower. If I come over to this melodic sound here, I've got a little loop here to play. Turn it down a bit. If I turn it to wow and turn this up, you can see it follows the little diagram here. This allows you to change it so it has a chorus effect where it goes, it makes a copy on both sides and they do the opposite thing. You can see with them here, they follow each other but a bit of a delay. Just adds stereo width. The rate just increases how quick that moves up and down. This rate is for flutter. So if I turn this to flutter here, it sort of reminds you of those like memes you see on TikTok where they like get jump scared or something and they scream and they turn up the flutter and it sounds ridiculous. And then the mix here is just a dry and wet knob, and the flux does the same thing, just increases the emphasis. And then this is big dry and wet knob here. Turn that down. Distortion. This is one of the best parts, but we'll just try this out. Maybe we'll do it with the bass here. I've got a bass tone. Just made a little loop. So I'll crank up the distortion. We're just gonna use the tube one. There's a bunch of different ones. I'm not a big fan of most of these. The tube one's really nice. I don't really use the other ones. This focus area allows you to adjust what frequencies are being affected by the distortion. So you can eliminate all the low end here and it would just affect the high end of the bass. We'll do that here, so turn up the distortion. So you hear how it's just affecting the high end, because if I bring this back down, it'll affect the bass. It doesn't sound too hot, so. And then the flux is the same thing. The flux is the same for all of these, it just adds more emphasis. Next we got some digital. I would call it more like bit crushing. It just makes things sound retro. I'll turn it up, I'll show you an example. I'll come back to them a lot, you'll hear it better here. It sounds like an SP, one of the old SP machines. So this top part refers to the sample rate or the bit depth reduction. So if I turn this to here, it's reducing the sample rate. If I turn it to this way, it's reducing the bit depth, which adds that sort of digital sound. Alright, and then this is the same as the distortion one here. You can adjust the frequencies that it takes effect if you don't want your bass or you don't want the high end being run through this digital bit crushing. And the cut button, you can turn it on and off. It just means that the ones that are outside the specified range will be completely cut. So if I bring this up, you hear how there's no more low information anymore. If I turn it this way, you'll hear it. And if I bring it back down, there's low information. And if I turn this off, you'll still hear it too. This smoothing knob, it just says it lets you polish off the rough digital edges. You can see it in the diagram when I turn it up, how it makes everything just a bit smoother. You can definitely hear the difference. That digital sound sort of goes away. I like using that one. And then the mix is just dry and wet. Next we have reverb. That's what this is. I'll stick with the melodic, you'll be able to hear it. The decay lets you control how long the reverb goes for. Pre-delay, sometimes you have a sound that you don't want the transient at the start to be delayed. You just want the, I guess you'd call it the tail, to be delayed. So you can use this to move the reverb slightly ahead, or I guess slightly behind the tail. You can sort of see how they're getting less affected by the transients. You can hear it in the reverb. You can hear that snare. It sounds like it's being clipped off at the start, the reverb. But then if I turn it, you can really hear it popping. That's all that's useful. Probably would use that on drums, would be the main thing, because it reduces muddiness. So you wouldn't really use that on some of the melodic stuff. And then the focus, same thing. You can adjust the frequencies it takes place. This is handy for drums again, because you don't want to put reverb on the bass frequencies, so you can get rid of that. The stereo button allows you to make mono sounds into stereo by doubling the reverb, I guess you'd say, if you have a mono signal like this. You can hear it's just going straight, it's just mono. So this magnetic section affects the dynamics of the sound. It's meant to emulate magnetic tape. So it's sort of like the wow and flutter from the wobble section, where it's just a longer, slower dynamic change, whereas flutter is much quicker and much more noticeable. And then the stereo lets you choose if it does the same thing in both speakers or not. And dropouts sometimes happen with the actual tape, just quick dropouts, and you can adjust how intense they are. And then the rate, same thing with the wow and flutter, you can adjust how quick they affect. So if we turn this on here, have to really turn it up to notice with the wear. Subtle, very subtle. But if I turn over to flutter here, you'll notice it a lot. Much more noticeable than the wear. So that's all this section, the middle section here, all the different effects. Down the bottom we've got some more standard things you'd find on most plugins. You got the input gain. You can adjust the gain when the sound comes in. This section, you can turn it on here. You got an EQ, you can adjust what frequencies are outputted, and you can adjust whether it's a soft curve, they say here, or a steeper hard curve. I like to use this one on the low end, because you can control your low end a bit and then turn on this hard curve and it adds a bump. Really smacks on drums. And then the high end, you would only use this one really. A steep high end cut doesn't sound very natural most of the time. Maybe you could use it if you're trying to emulate vinyl. This tone knob, the tone knob over here, if you turn it up, the bass goes away. If you turn it down, the bass is amplified. And you can adjust how harsh it is with these two. And then you got the stereo width here. You can make it mono. You can make it stereo. I'll give you a quick example. I'm sure you know what it does though. So that's right in the middle. Now that's all the way. And then output gain here. So after you've done everything, you probably want to, particularly if you're using distortion, you want to turn it down to match the original sound. Otherwise you're going to get clipping. Alright, let's give you some examples of what I would do with this and how I use it most of the time. I love drum break 3. If I go over to my drums here. So I'll just turn this down so you can't hear it yet. That's what the drums sound like normally. Makes it sound like an old school drum break, doesn't it? It's really good. You can see it cut a lot of the low end. But this is still okay, because you're going to add a bass line normally after this, so you need that space for your bass line anyways. But it distorted it with tube saturation, and then you got the vinyl emulation coming there to make it sound old, and the reverb to make it sound like an old school drum break, and it's in mono. Example with this melodic component here, I love to use the vinyl here. Adds a bit of vinyl sound. Get a little bit of wobble. It's really good for taking sounds off YouTube and essentially turning them into vinyl sounds. Like it's like taking a modern sound and emulating a vinyl. So it's like you got it from a vinyl. And the bass here, I don't use this for my bass really, but if you turn it back to, I would use it somewhat like this. So I'll play the bass first. I would turn this to mono. I would use this EQ a little bit and just bring that up maybe to 35. It's up to you if you want to add vinyl noise. You've probably got other things in the beat. If you're making that old school sort of boom bap, you probably have other things in the beat that already have this vinyl noise, so you don't need to overlap. But you can if you want. I'll make it sound like it's from vinyl. You can hear there it follows every note hit. And then don't worry about the wobble. I wouldn't worry about that too much. You want your bass to remain the same pitch. This you will though, the distortion. Let's turn that up. Or you can just distort the bottom end. It's up to you. I wouldn't use the digital distortion unless you're going for that real lo-fi sound. If you were just making a beat that just had bass and drums, then you might consider adding this to your bass to fill out the high end a little bit. I wouldn't worry about that either. You don't put reverb on basses. And the magnetic tape, it's up to you. Personal preference, I wouldn't use it on the bass. I don't really need volume dropouts on the bass. I sort of want it to remain a similar dB. I wouldn't really touch it. And it's up to you if you want to use the tone down here too. It's all personal preference. I'll adjust it so you can hear what it sounds like, but I like the way that sounds though, that frowny curve. Sounds good. So I don't use this plugin as much as I used to. I remember I used to be concerned because I'd see all these producers using RC-20. It's been out for a while now. And I wanted to sort of space myself a bit and be a bit more unique, as we all do. But I've come back to it and found that I can use it for certain applications and customize it myself, and that's why I really like using RC-20 now, particularly for that vinyl emulation. It's really good. I have a bunch of other plugins that do it, but this one's really good for taking a sound and turning it into something else. Let's look at some similar products. So this is just the plugin boutique page for RC-20. I buy a lot of plugins off plugin boutique. It's great, and that's sort of the price you're looking at. I'm pretty sure that's USD. I've never shopped here, and it hasn't been in Australian dollars. That's USD right there. Yeah, it's very popular. Very popular. Some other plugins you can look at. This plugin works pretty well as well. It's called Degrader. I'll do a review of this too eventually. But Degrader does the same thing, except it's a bit more on the emulation of old systems. It doesn't have the distortion and shaping capabilities like RC-20. It doesn't have any of those EQs and filters and stuff like that. So you can't shape as much as RC-20, but you can see it's like half the price, more than half. Just another option, I would say. Here's another option. This is Tape Mellow-Fi. I actually use this relatively routinely. It's also one of my favorites. Very similar to RC-20 in a lot of aspects, and it's a similar price as RC-20. It's like $1 cheaper. But this is a great plugin, particularly if you were there when it launched because it was free. It's a good plugin, very good plugin, very cool looking too. Love the style, all the stuff moves, and you got the tape wind down effect, and this here you can adjust how many bars it takes to wind down, so you can automate that button and turn it on and it will do a tape wind down effect, and it sounds really sick. The last one I'm thinking of for the time being is Fin Retro, or Finish Retro, but it comes up as Fin Retro. Again, it's like $1 cheaper than RC-20. Very similar. It does a lot of the same things as the other two that I've talked about. I love the presets on here. It's a really good plugin. Your finish is just a giant wet knob. You can add grit and color. Much more simple looking, I would say. It's the presets that do the work here, emulating old tube saturation stuff. I love it. I'll do a review of this too at some point. It's a good plugin. And there we go. Made it to the end. I've walked you through. If you're still here, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. I'll get used to talking to the microphone and the camera and talking to myself at some point. It's so different to just making a video with no talking or anything and just putting it out. And I'm not super confident in my voice, so it's going to take a while, but hopefully everyone enjoys the content, and hopefully I gave you some knowledge. And if you're looking at buying this plugin, it's a great plugin. I highly recommend it, but make sure you shop around because some of those other plugins are very good too. This has the shaping capability though, I would say, that those other plugins don't have. So even if you don't like some of the stuff it does, you can use it for other things. Whereas the other plugins, if you buy them and you don't like the sounds that they make, if you don't like the character that they add to your sounds, you're in trouble because you can't really use them for anything else. But yeah, thank you for watching.